Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us this afternoon. My name is Sebastian Deck, and I'm a senior attorney at the Center for International Environmental Law. During the past 2 weeks, we have witnessed an alarming gap between, on one hand, the demand of civil society, indigenous peoples' representatives, scientists, and governments representing the most vulnerable. And on the other hand, the total absence of adequate commitments from the polluters and the rich countries in the negotiations, but also in parallel events, including in announcements made around the COP and in fora like the G20. While civil society and indigenous peoples' representatives have consistently stressed the importance of addressing climate change as a human rights crisis, the conference has been marred with the promotion of false solutions and a wide variety of pledges that have actually doubled down on fossil fuels, which undermine the enjoyment of all human rights. The COP has been further affected by the strike unbalance in power and voice in the process. Many civil society and indigenous peoples' representatives have been personally targeted by acts of intimidation and harassment by operatives with badges provided by the host of this conference. At the same time, hundreds of corporate lobbyists have had plenty of opportunities to promote their corporate interests across the conference, so much that it has turned as much into a business fair than an actual UN process. As we enter the final stretch of the conference today, our panel will review in particular the most recent developments in relation to the final political outcome that we expect to see coming out in the coming days. The three experts that we have today on the panel will share their key takeaways on the state of play of these political discussions, in particular reacting to the negotiating text that was circulated this morning, and also what they hope to see in the negotiations and how they hope to see them evolve in order to ensure that the COP concludes in a positive manner after all. First panelist on my right, Nikki Reich is the director of the Climate and Energy Program at the Center for International Environmental Law. She will provide a brief overview of how the need to effectively phase out all fossil fuels is addressed at the moment in the negotiations.
Thank you, and good evening, good afternoon, all. The cover text that dropped this in the wee hours this morning was long, was late, and was wholly lacking in the ambition needed to confront the mounting climate crisis. The current draft doesn't even mention oil and gas once. Just think about that at a climate conference. It fails to reflect the growing calls from civil society, indigenous peoples, and many countries for an equitable phase-out of all fossil fuels, oil, gas, and coal, not least statements made by countries including those from the AOSIS bloc, the EU, Colombia, and even major fossil fuel producers like the United States and Norway. The presidency seems to have selectively ignored those messages when pulling together the draft circulated earlier today. Let me be clear, if this COP does not extend the commitment to phasing out fossil fuels beyond coal to include oil and critically gas, about which we've heard an awful lot here, it's a failure, full stop. Simply reiterating the Glasgow commitments as the G20 communique did would be a step backwards, especially when we're facing the urgency of the climate crisis that is upon us. But we're seeing parties resisting even reiteration of those partial and qualified commitments that were made in Glasgow, where countries finally dared to utter the F words in the climate talks. Why is this so critical? We cannot fight climate change without getting off of fossil fuels. That's all fossil fuels. And we cannot limit warming to 1.5 degrees without accelerating the just and equitable transition away from fossil fuels and naming what it is we're transitioning away from toward a rights-respecting future of people-centered solutions, renewable energy, and energy efficiency. Science and justice demand an unqualified phase-out of all fossil fuels, oil, gas, and coal, without exception or euphemism. We've seen in this past year how the weak language and partial language of phase down but not phase out and unabated and inefficient fossil fuel subsidies left tanker-sized loopholes for new fossil fuel investments in infrastructure, new investments for which there is no room. From the report of the UN Secretary General's high-level expert group on net zero greenwashing released last week to the International Energy Agency's report in 2021, the writing is on the wall. It couldn't be clearer. There can be no new investments in oil, gas, or coal. We must have an immediate phase-out, an immediate halt to fossil fuel expansion and an equitable phase-out. But instead, what we've seen here are multiple new gas deals signed on the margins of this climate summit. Some of them in the guise of blue hydrogen deals, which, newsflash, is just a Trojan horse for more fossil gas. That alone speaks volumes about how far we are from where we need to be. It also speaks volumes about the outsized influence that the fossil fuel industry has had on this COP, where the number of fossil fuel lobbyists on delegations has reportedly risen by 25% over last year's high. Again, a move backwards. We've heard more about techno fixes like carbon capture and storage, blue hydrogen, and large-scale carbon dioxide removal than we have about strategies to accelerate the transition away from fossil fuels and toward a renewable energy efficiency, and sustainable future. But those speculative technologies, unproven at scale, only prolong our reliance on the fossil era and delay the needed emissions reductions today, increasing the likelihood of overshooting 1.5 and unleashing further catastrophic harm, because we know that harm is occurring today already. The focus on these dangerous distractions is not because the real solutions don't exist. Renewable energy, electrification, energy efficiency, and behavior change give us the tools we need right now to replace fossil fuels and begin drastically reducing emissions immediately. Yet the myth of low carbon or carbon-free fossil fuels is alive and well at this COP, indeed in the negotiating halls too. Fossil fuel producers flooding the halls are practically falling over each other to sell their products as the cleanest dirty energy around. We're not buying it. No amount of carbon capture can accelerate the needed transition to a fossil-free future. We have to reject the co-optation of the language of just transition by fossil fuel producers who are trying to portray their dangerous, dirty products as part of the solution rather than the central problem that they are. But the first step in any transition, as I said, is recognizing the need for a change. That is calling out the need to move away from all fossil fuels towards a fossil-free, renewable energy and energy efficiency future. To conclude, if we're not moving forward in an ambitious and effective way, we're going backwards. And that's exactly what we're seeing here at this COP, like unfortunately too many COPs before. Anything less than an unqualified commitment to the phase-out of all fossil fuels, oil, gas, and coal, without loophole or exception, would be unacceptable and will make a mockery of the notion that this is an implementation COP. Thank you.
Thank you, Nikki, for this overview. Next, we'll hear from Landry Nintereste, the African Regional Director at 350.org. Landry will provide us with an African outlook on the COP27, building on the comments that were just made, and in particular, expanding on fall solutions that are being discussed for the continent.
Yes, good evening, everyone. When the announcement of COP27 coming to Africa was made, I felt relieved that this COP is the one that can address the very profound issues of climate injustice and disasters that we've been working on and campaigning on for years and years. But yet at this stage, 2 weeks after the negotiation, it's so disappointing that the current text on the table doesn't mention the very critical issues of adaptation, of loss and damage, and also loss and damage, adaptation, and mitigation, because those are the ones that we believe are going to save our population. Again, no clear indication or even mention in the text of phasing out fossil fuels. That's a failure itself, because at the moment what we are seeing instead is the dash for gas in Africa. My colleague mentioned how this COP, again labeled as the African COP, is populated by so many fossil fuels lobbies. Again, when I came here, I was expecting to see grassroots activists, those leaders that are confronting the crisis, but instead, in the lobbies of this space, keep meeting lobbyists and lobbyists. And no wonder why, even the final text, the demands and the voices of the people are not represented. I'm not even mentioning the challenges that many of our brothers and sisters on the continent face when trying to come to this particular space, from accommodation to accreditation, getting visas, etc. It has been a struggle for many of us to be here. And again, as we approach the end of this conference, seeing no significant progress in the negotiation is not only disappointing, but it is very clear indication that the world delegates, the leaders, are not at all listening to the cry of the people. And on the full solution, my colleague again mentioned a few of them, but even further disappointing is that John Kerry, U.S. ambassador, last Friday was the one hammering that this is the way forward, and not really putting on the table clear proposal on how a big polluter like the U.S. is going to support affected countries and communities with the just equitable transition, which is known, which is available, especially on the continent with such abundant renewable energy potential. They keep turning around, not going to the solution, but suggesting some unproven scientific, I don't know if scientific they are, technology as the one to address the crisis. It's so disappointing. It's so it's terrible that we're gonna go back to our communities, to our partners with empty result. This is it's not the COP that we've imagined. It's not the COP that we thought is going to help us move forward, especially when it happened in the aftermath of another pandemic, which added on the crisis a long list of disasters that we have. And talking a little bit about the dash for gas on the continent, it's such a dangerous and short-sighted approach, which is only fueled by the utopian dream that this approach is going to provide any solution. It's just because of the geopolitical context. We all know what's happening with, in the north part there, and it's at any point going to benefit the population on the continent. Investing in fossil fuel gas production does nothing in addressing African climate emergency. And I want also to touch on another point that's most of the time overlooked about the dangers of fossil fuels, and this is conflict and wars. If you know the geopolitical context of the continent and you are familiar with the politics in Nigeria, in the Congo, in Mozambique, to see countries still pushing for gas exploration in those areas, it's not only a mark of irresponsibility, but also a way of backing already fragile context and adding that with the extraction, because with that we see regions that have been peaceful lately, like Mozambique, again facing insurgencies and other risk of violence. That's another element which is most of the time oversighted. And exactly, the extractivism and neocolonial practices are fueling that, that element. And now, what is the message from the civil society and other groups, environmentalists, grassroots community? Again, we are calling for an end of fossil fuel induced energy apartheid on the continent. We already have 600 million people without no access, and those people could benefit for affordable, cost-effective, clean, and decentralized renewable energy only if the historical polluters pay up their debt. That's the message. The solutions, again, they exist. They're on the table. There have been an enormous amount of scientific papers published to demonstrate how renewable energy can not only solve the energy deficit on the continent, but also boost the local economies and address the societal needs of our community, and of course, protect the environment without adding and opening new climate bombs on the continent. I hope this message will be heard. I hope this call, though it may be late now, but I know the negotiations are still going on, probably someone will finally listen and do something. Thank you.
Thank you, Landry. And now we'll hear about a final panelist, Joey Chodorodi, who is the Program Coordinator for Environment and Economic, Social and Cultural Rights at EACRNet. Joey is going to conclude the panel coming back to this point of climate apartheid with a short analysis of where governments stand on action to tackle climate-related loss and damage.
Good evening, everybody. So for many countries and for civil society, COP27 was a loss and damage COP, where the litmus test was to pass a loss and damage finance facility. Why? Loss and damage, climate impacts, has been manifesting in truly devastating ways across regions. Hundreds of millions of lives affected. Thousands died this year alone due to weather events that can be attributed to climate change. Loss and damage is undermining the enjoyment of the rights to life, food, water, housing, health, education, livelihood, and many other rights. Rights in relation to which states have clear existing obligations, including extraterritorially. And today, those most affected by the climate crisis are mostly those who have contributed the least to the climate crisis. And we know, yes, that many must confront these climate impacts with limited resources due to the histories of colonialism and extractivism. The loss and damage crisis is a human rights crisis, and states must take meaningful action to address loss and damage, including through the provision of loss and damage finance, climate reparations. So what have we seen so far at COP27? Not much. But let's focus on the Santiago Network and the loss and damage finance. As the implementation arm of the Warsaw International Mechanism for Loss and Damage, the Santiago Network is a very important element to ensure that the Warsaw International Mechanism delivers on its third function, enhancing action and support through catalyzing technical assistance. Text was adopted yesterday on the Santiago Network, agreeing on the institutional arrangements of the Santiago Network to enable its full operationalization, affirming that technical assistance must be in line with the Paris Preambular Text on Human Rights, also including other human rights-aligned language and considerations. The text is not all we wanted and could have been much stronger, but at least it creates a base foundation for rights-based approaches. And we know that rights-based climate action leads to more effective outcomes. So right now, what is important is to see how this plays out in practice. But let's move now to finance. And there we are in a complete blockage, a complete logjam. The IPCC report, which was earlier released this year on climate impacts, paints a truly terrifying picture of climate impacts that is and will continue to lead to devastating human rights harm and the destruction of our ecosystems. We are seeing this in real time all around us, in the news every single day, and yet there is this disturbing disconnect between what we are seeing in the negotiation rooms and the real suffering that has been unfolding now for years. We are looking at 30 years of inaction. While the G77 plus China has come out with a concrete proposal for a loss and damage fund, we are seeing a real distract and delay strategy from major historical polluters who are paying lip service to loss and damage finance while continuing to block a loss and damage finance facility and not taking meaningful action to address loss and damage. These types of tactics are disturbing. This is not some kind of game for us. This is our lives, our livelihoods, our well-beings across our countries, across the world. And countries from the global north are failing us badly. There are bilateral pledges on the table, and we appreciate this. Powerful as bilateral pledges are, we also need a loss and damage finance facility. We need a system set up to manage the flow of finance needed to address and remedy the human rights impacts of loss and damage, that is accountable within the system that we have within the UNFCCC where CBDR applies. Millions are impacted in the here and now. There has been extensive knowledge of the drivers of this crisis, where the responsibility lies for a very long time. What we're asking for is not for a handout. What we're asking for is reparations. And there has been a lot of talk about the global shield. Yes, insurance might have a small part to play, but no more smoke and mirror offerings of insurance as a sustainable solution at the scale at which we need loss and damage finance. We know that it is not up to the task given the scale of the crisis and the needs of the most impacted. The failure of parties, particularly parties bearing historical responsibilities and with the most available resources to meaningfully address loss and damage, is causing immense human suffering, and it is not compliant with international legal duties, including human rights obligations. COP27 will be an important moment to change this course. So to conclude, right now in the COP27 cover decision, there are brackets around funding arrangements and no actual text because countries have not yet reached an agreement. The COP27 cover decision must center human rights. And just to note that for loss and damage, strong outcomes on phasing out fossil fuels, on mitigation and adaptation are also key to reduce the future scale of loss and damage. And importantly, wealthy countries must, in line with polluter pays principles and their human rights obligations, agree to the establishment of a loss and damage fund at COP27 to be operational and fit for purpose to deliver new and additional finance that must be right-centered and gender transformative, to be delivered in the form of grants, not loans, by COP28. COP27 cover decision must reflect this agreement. For many of us, the measure of success at this COP is the establishment of the loss and damage facility. This is a human rights and climate change imperative. Our communities cannot wait any longer. This is not a technical decision, it is a political one. Our call to parties, wealthy nations in particular, is to get it done. Thank you.
Thank you, Joy. So we've heard the imperative for the presidency to hear and reflect the calls from a diverse set of countries to actually root the COP outcome in science and reality, frankly, and recognize the need to phase out fossil fuel. We've heard the call to end the promotion of false solutions that just guarantee and safeguards the protection of the status quo and the fossil fuel-based economy, and in particular, the impacts on the communities that should have been represented here at this COP. And finally, we heard the importance, the necessity for this COP to finally resolve the gross injustice that results from 30 years of climate negotiations and a total failure to mobilize resources for the communities that are impacted by the first two sets of issues. We'll open the floor now for any questions. We'll ask you to kindly introduce yourself, and please let us know if you would like to direct your question to any of the panelists.
Hi, my name is Christabel Calabretta. I'm a third-year law student at the University of Connecticut in the United States of America. My question for you is, this entire week I've been seeing the difference between the atmosphere in the negotiations versus in the pavilions and in all these panel events. And I've been thinking about the structure of COP. Do any of you have anything to say about how COP could be structured differently to include those voices in the negotiations way more effectively than it's doing right now?
I'll suggest that we take a couple of questions and then we come back to the panel. Will there be any additional questions in the room?
Hi, my name is Mohammad Az, and I'm a journalist at Mada Masr. My question is really to any of the panelists. I was wondering if there isn't an agreement on the loss and damage fund. Do you call this COP a failure? And if so, like how bad or how big of a failure is it compared to other previous COPs? Thank you.
Thank you for this question. I'd like to see if there is a third question perhaps before we come back to the panel. Otherwise, let's turn to the panel. Maybe we can start with Joy on the second question.
Thank you for the question. And yes, I do think it would be a failure. For those of us who work with communities and movements every day who are based in the Global South, there are very real consequences to these delays. It is a matter of human lives. It is a matter of well-being. It is a matter of livelihoods. Human rights are being devastated by the loss and damage crisis, and states have an obligation to act, and they have been talking about it for years, and the disconnect is not acceptable. The timeline cannot be the timeline of the states. The timeline has to be the timeline of the communities that are facing those climate impacts right now. So we are tired of states talking for so long and not delivering. So absolutely for civil society, and I also believe for many states, that if a loss and damage fund is not established, there would be a failure of monumental proportions. Thank you.
Thank you, Joy. And we'll hear maybe from Landry and Nikki on the other question.
Thank you. I think I'll comment on your question about whether it's about changing the approach or the structure of the COPs, or ways of making these processes more inclusive and representative. Yes, I think it's more a question of leadership, decided leadership, and also political will and prioritization of the issue. I keep referring to this example. To solve the COVID pandemic, it didn't require 27 summits and 27 years to do so. The pandemic was solved in, less than one year or so. It doesn't require summit and negotiation to do so. The fact that we are not getting there is because just the world and the political representative are not seeing this as an urgency, are not giving the right resources and priority level. Otherwise, the issue would have been solved a while ago.
And finally, to conclude the press conference, we'll have a final word from Nikki.
Thank you, and thanks for the question. I think the key takeaway when you look outside the negotiating halls and inside is the gross imbalance of power that exists in this space, and the fundamental need to kick polluters out of these negotiations. The COP has come to a point that it resembles more a trade expo, a show in which companies are trying to peddle their wares, than it is a policy space for solving perhaps the greatest crisis facing humanity and our ecosystems and biosphere that we've ever seen. And so that needs to be rectified immediately. And I think what we've seen, as my colleague pointed out in the beginning, is that gross imbalance extends also to the restrictions that civil society, indigenous peoples, and many countries around the world that lack the resources needed to be here and to show up in full force and to speak freely and with a voice that is heard not only in these halls, but in the world around. And that is a human right to freedom of expression and assembly. It is a right to be heard and to influence decision-making, and it should not be overshadowed by corporate power and greed that has an undue influence here as it does back in our home countries around the world. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll conclude the press conference now. We'll be standing with the three panelists just outside of this conference room if you'd like to discuss further with us. Thank you again, and good luck for the rest of the COP.